I hope my screen is visible, sir.
Yeah, passive euthanasia.
So this is a very interesting topic. In the ICU, many of us has come across whether we should take DNR or not DNR, whether we can withdraw the patient's ventilator or not. So these sort of issues have been there. So what we are discussing today is the Indian, where as a country, India and Indian law stands. So we'll be discussing this passive euthanasia. So today's focus will be on euthanasia. It will be passive or active in the Indian perspective. Will not we may try to cover this brainstem that ventilator removal, DNR, DOR request, LAMA, DAMA request will take in 5-10 minutes. But important is where do we stand? So before going, what are the definitions of euthanasia? Euthanasia means you are removing, it's the practice of intentionally ending a life to relieve the pain and suffering. Long-term patient, long-term, usually malignancy patient, cancer patients, where you think that the treatment is futile and you want to end that life intentionally. So that is called euthanasia. It can be passive and it can be active. Passive means we are withholding the treatment which is required for the continuation of life. Suppose you have a patient on ventilator, noradrenaline support is on 10 ml per hour, anuric is patient. So this patient may require escalation of adrenaline, noradrenaline, vasopressor. This patient require dialysis. But what you do, it's a passive thing. Now you will not escalate the treatment. You will not put up the supports. You will not do the dialysis. It's a sort of passive euthanasia. Active means you use of a substance by administering a lethal injection. Usually in the foreign countries, in some countries, that is active. So where India stands, we'll discuss this, because most of us come across a scenario where you need to give passive euthanasia, sort of passive euthanasia or ventilator. So most of the time attendants say that we don't want to continue the patient treatment and you withdraw the ventilator. So as legally in India, where we stand, this we are going to see and have a more clarity. So next time if somebody from your administration or some minister or some family members say what you can suggest. So this is a patient, typical scenario, 83-year-old male on noradrenaline, adrenaline, anuric on ventilator, septic shock, but typical ARDS, malignancy, etc. And we know that this is a point of need. As a doctor, as an intensivist, you know that this patient is not going to come out. The therapy may prolong the life for 2, 3, 4 days, but we know that it's a point of no return. Post CPR survival, anoxic brain injury, no point of putting that. But can you remove the ventilator of this patient in your ICU? That's the biggest question. What we are discussing today is in 2018 March, the Supreme Court of India gave a judgment. This was headed by Chief Justice of India at that time, Mr. Honorable Deepak Misra. He said that until a law regarding passive euthanasia is made in the country, in India, this verdict remains as a law. There is a clear line written in this whole topic, whole judgment. It's some 548 pages judgment. So I have compiled all this in few slides so that you can understand. Next time you are confident in telling what you need to tell to the patient or relatives, even your hospital administration, even some minister calls. So the Honorable Chief Justice of India, Deepak Misra, said in this verdict, until a law is made, this is going to be the law. It's clear written. It's the March 2018, and since then it has not been updated. It's reportable, as you can see. I've highlighted. That means it's public domain. So in this, what they have covered is right to die with dignity. There were submissions that it was put. Every patient has some right to die with dignity. So they come up with an what you call it, it's a document which is known as advanced directive. I don't know if this mouse is working or not, where I can highlight spotlight. Okay, so you can see here right to die with dignity. I think my mouse, sir, my mouse is visible on the screen. Okay,
Visible, mouse is visible.
mouse is visible. Huh? So they tell that every patient has the right to die with dignity, but in a country like India, where there are so much no clarity, what they come up with, advanced directive, or they will call as advanced care directive, or they will call as advanced medical directive. They all stand for the same. So in that, what they have covered, who can execute the advanced directive? Means advanced directive means if a patient lands in a particular condition where there is a point of no return, then who can execute that advanced directive? Secondly, that advanced directive, what should it contain? What should be there in this particular directive? Then even if there is an advanced directive, there is a content written in where it should be recorded and where it should be preserved. Fourthly, when and by whom can it be given effect to? Suppose the patient lands in the condition, then who will show this document? And what if permission is refused by the medical board and revocation or incapability of this? Okay, somehow. Next. So this procedure is fixed by the Supreme Court, which is to be adopted for making the executing of advanced directive or living will. This advanced directive you will call in future in the coming slide as living will. Means when the patient is alive, he has passed a directive that if something happens to me, or if I reaches a stage where there is a point of no return, this document will come handy by a person. So Supreme Court has defined which is to be adopted as for making and executing of an advanced directive or living will by a person for withdrawal of medical treatment. Here we are not discussing active euthanasia. In India, there is no role of active euthanasia. You cannot give any active, means injecting something or giving some injection to end the life of patient is not at all acceptable. It is illegal. But for passive euthanasia, this is the advanced directive. This is the procedure which is to be followed by Supreme Court. And till date, it is not been followed by anyone. But let's see, there is one case, then one couple in, I think in the south, somewhere Karnataka or Andhra, who have righted their living will. So it is to be done by a person for the withdrawal of medical treatment if he is suffering from an incurable disease with no chance of recovery to prevent pain and suffering. Okay. Now, who can execute the advanced directive and how? It can be executed only by an adult of a sound healthy state of mind. Secondly, it must be voluntarily executed without any, these are the standards. And in it, what it should be written, when medical treatment may be withdrawn or no specific medical treatment shall be given. So it has two components. One, either the directive can, it could be that the treatment can be withdrawn, or if something happens, then no further treatment should be given. So these are two different scenarios you need to understand in passive euthanasia also. One is either you can withdraw the treatment, or secondly, you don't do anything higher, means no specific medication. Suppose you need a dialysis of this patient, but you will not do the dialysis. So this will, what will happen? This will help, this will have effect on delaying the process of death, and which may otherwise cause the pain and suffering. So adult of a sound mind, voluntary, and it should be written when. What should it contain? It should clearly indicate that decision relating to circumstances in which, in what circumstances. Suppose is in this living will, it is written, if I suffered from an incurable disease or a malignancy, and if I reaches it to a state that my I'm on a ventilator, or I'm on something I require dialysis, or I'm in an unconscious state from which there's a point of no return, then in such circumstances it should be taken. This advance will come into effect. It should mention, secondly, it should mention that the executor may revoke the authority at any time. Means the person who will produce the living document, who will produce these documents to the hospital. Suppose suppose XYZ patient has written a living directive, and this patient is our patient who is unconscious, who is not able to tell anything. Now in the living will, he has appointed his son or sister or mother or wife, any one person, that this so and so person can produce this document. But in that document, it is the that power should also be returned to that relative, that it can revoke the authority at any time, means he can withdraw it. And in that, it should specify the name of the guardian or close relative who, in the event of executor becoming incapable of taking a decision, will be authorized to give consent for withdrawal of treatment. Suppose he has given a consent of it to his sister. He has mentioned that my name is so and so, and in the event something happens to me, my sister is going to produce, will be the in charge. So wife cannot act, mother cannot act. Only the person which is written, name who's written in this document, have the right to produce the document. If the sister feels no, this is not a point of no return, I'm not going to produce this document. So nobody, even wife cannot produce this. The name which is written in the document only can produce the living will in front of the doctors there. Now, how it should be preserved? So all these living document will be will be made when the person is alive in a conscious state. It cannot happen that a person lands to you in your hospital in the ICU and he's in unconscious state and now he's writing the advance will. No, this should be written beforehand. Then when the patient is healthy, when the patient, suppose a patient is suffering from malignancy, he knows that in 1 or 2 years I'm going to die. At that time, he is fully alert, he is fully conscious and in a healthy state. Then he can produce, make this advanced living will, that if something happens, I reach an ICU, then this living will be produced. So how it should be, so how it should be preserved. So document should be signed by the executor, means the person who is making the living will, in the presence of 2 assisting witness, and counter signed by the judicial magistrate of first class. It is very important. It is, in short, it is known as JMFC. Those who are in the legal matter, they can understand it's very very important post in the judiciary. So in front of 2 witnesses, this living will be made, and it will be countersigned by the JMFC, judicial magistrate of first class, and they will tell that okay, this person has made this document living will and he is in full state of mind and there is no under any influence. Secondly, now what will happen? This one document will be kept by JMFC shall preserve 1 copy. This 1 copy will remain with the judge. In his court, this copy will be there, and 1 copy to the registry of judicial district court. This 1 copy will be sent to the judicial district court. 1 in the JMFC court, 1 in the district court, and in a digital document also the registry can maintain this document. Then once the judge has countersigned, then the court of this JMFC will inform the family member. Suppose there is a couple is there, suppose a person went to the court in presence of 2 friends, make a document that if something happens to me, this should not be done, a ventilator should not be put on, etc., etc. Judge has signed, and then immediately what happened when the judge signs, the court will inform the family members. They will inform his wife, they will inform his son, they will inform his family, mother and wife, that this person has made this and so document, and make them about the execution of the document. It should be clear. The family should know that this advance directive has been made. It cannot be confidential from the family. Close relatives are known about. Then a copy. So we have 2 copies preserved. 1 copy is with the JMFC court, 1 is with the judicial district court. 3rd copy will go to the competent officer of the local government or municipal corporation or municipality panchayat, depends upon where the patient is residing. They will, the officer will be nominated by the local municipal corporation. And JMFC can also hand over 1 directly copy to the family physician, if any. If suppose there is a family physician of particular family member, particular that patient, they can give 1 copy to the physician. So we will have 4 copies. 1 copy in the JMFC court, 2nd in the registry, judicial district court, 3rd copy to the local authority. Suppose I'm living in Indore, so my municipal corporation will receive 1 copy, such and such. And 1, if there is a family physician of mine, 1 copy will be received by this family physician. So when and by whom can even affect to? So now all the formalities has been done. All the formalities has been done, that if something happens this living will come into effect. So now when and who can give effect to? So the treating physician, when made aware about the advance directive, shall ascertain the genuine and authenticity thereof from the JFMC. Suppose you have a patient in your ICU, you are the treating physician, and the family members come, sir, this my father has told that in the case of something happens to him, he doesn't want to continue the treatment, he wants the withdrawal of the treatment. So what the treating physician will do, the treating intensivist or treating physician, he will confirm the directive from the JMFC code before acting upon. They will confirm from JMFC whether something like this is in their code or not. Now, if the physician feels that okay, there is a copy of this document in the JMC, he shall inform the executor or his guardian to close relative, as the case may be. Means in the document, suppose a wife comes that so and so my husband has told that if something happens, you need to act on this living will. But in the document, it is written is the sister or it's the mother or it's the father or it's the son who will take the decision. So what the treating physician will do, he will inform the executor or his guardian or close relative about the nature of illness, the availability of medical care, consequence of alternative forms of treatment, consequence of remaining untreated. It's very important. Suppose advance directive may be written 5 years back, and at 5 years back some sort of therapy was not available at that time. But now when the family comes and you have a therapy available with them, so by the time, at the time, maybe it's possible that that fellow has mentioned in that if this thing happens, if I'm a point of no return, withdraw the treatment. But you need to make them understand that this was 5 years back. Now he is in the same condition, but now we have a therapy available with which he may survive. So this can be modified. But if you feel that going ahead with the therapy, there are chances that he may not come out. You need to explain them, and if he remains untreated, then he may succumb. All medical conditions, like we explain them in the regular way, they needs to be explained. Also, he need to make sure that to whom he is explaining, he understands the information provided and he has a firm view on the option of withdrawal or refusal of medical treatment. It should not be a dilemma that, okay, because father has said you need to withdraw, but they should be firmly believe that this treatment is not going to help and we are of the firm opinion that we need to withdraw the treatment. So what the steps? Firstly, there was a making of a document by the person, which is to be made in presence of 2 witnesses, one and then countersigned by JFMC. Then one document will remain with JMFC, then second in the registry, third to the family physician, and fourth to the local municipal corporation. Now the patient is in your ICU and some family members come, okay, my father has this advance directive. So what the physician will do, first he will confirm from the court whether this is such and such thing was there. If it is there, then will inform the guardian who has to take the decision regarding the medical condition of the patient and make sure that they firmly wants to withdraw the treatment. Now it's all set. Now we are set. We have confirmed there is an advance directive. We confirmed that the family member is understanding. We confirmed that this patient is of no return. So treating physician also feels this is a point of no return, and the family members also understand this is a point of return. I tell you, what I'm saying, it looks like a very tedious process, but if you in practice, this can be done in 48 to 72 hours. I'll explain. So now the treating physician is comfortable that they want to withdraw, and he also of the view that going ahead is of no value. It's a futile effort. So now what will do? The hospital in which the patient is admitted, they will form a medical board, because it's a big decision. So only the treating physician opinion is not of that much value. They will form a medical board. Your hospital will form a medical board, and which needs to have 3 experts. One in the field of general medicine, second in the field of cardiology. Means out of these specialties, you need to have at least three experts. Either it could be general medicine, it could be cardiology, neurology, nephrology, psychiatry, or oncology with experience in critical care. They should have experience in critical care with overall standing in the field of medical profession for at least 20 years. Means senior people are required. They should, by the time after completing their MBBS, they or their medical MD or DM, their specialty, they should have at least 20 years of experience. So out of these specialty branches, 3 members should form a medical board. Now your hospital has formed a board. Okay, sir, please, this is the board is formed. This is the so and so situation. So we are forming a board. Now what this board will do? This board will go to the visit to the patient in the presence of his close relative and form an opinion whether to certify or not to certify instructions. Mean these 3-4 people, suppose a psychiatrist, suppose a cardiologist and a physician, are a board is formed. They will visit the ICU and see whether ascertain whether treatment is truly futile or not. Some may have the opinion like cardiology, no, I can put an IBP and treat this patient. Or if patient can be taken on IBP, IBP was not available 5-6 years back, but now it's available. You can take the patient on IBP and this patient can improve. So psychiatric patient, psychiatrist, if there is, he may feel that this person who is a close guardian, he is not in medical sound. Or general physician feels, though we have a newer antibiotics with us available, you should give a try to this. If this patient in sepsis can improve. So they will form an opinion, no, the person needs to given a chance, and we will not form an opinion. But if this 3-member board feels that, okay, what the treating physician was saying, what the attendants want, and this patient is of a point of no return, okay, we certify that they can go ahead with the withdrawal. So this is they will record in the paper. Preliminary report. Now what happened? The hospital administration feel, okay, so our board has also given the consent. I'm audible, sir? Okay. So the hospital feels, okay, this is comfortable, we can withdraw the patient. Now what they will do, they will inform the collector of their town. So this is, in practical, it's a very fast process. You are seeing the patient for a couple of days, you feel this is a point of return, you are counseling the patient, they come up with a directive, okay. Then in the morning, they form a board, they visit the patient in 1 hour or 2 hours, they form an opinion, this we can withdraw the patient for the support, and then they will inform the collector that such and such thing has happened. The collector shall immediately constitute a medical board with chief district medical officer of the concerned district, and they will form a same board which you have formed in the hospital. Your can be a private hospital, but what will form, they will inform the collector will inform the CMHO, and immediately a 3-member board will form, and again the same process will happen. The government officials, the government team will come to the hospital, and they will ascertain by the evening or afternoon, okay, this is a point of no return, and they shall jointly visit the hospital where the patient is admitted, and they concur the initial discussion of the medical call of the hospital, and they endorse to certify to carry out instruction by the advanced directive. So the government officials, government medical board will come and they will say, okay, this is so and so, we agree to go ahead with the family decision and the patient decision. This is a point of no return, you can withdraw. Now the board also will ascertain whether the wish of the executor, means the relative, whether he is able to communicate and is capable of understanding the consequences, the medical treatment that we have taken care. Now the consent of the guardian should be obtained regarding the withdrawal. Now when the medical board from the government has certified that you can withdraw the patient, on the same spot, they will take the consent of the guardian also, that I give my consent to withdraw, to execute the directive of this patient. So again, I am clarifying. First, your family members say that you should withdraw. Then the treating physician confirm with JMFC. After they confirm, they explain the prognosis. Then the hospital forms a board, they certifies. Then they inform the collector. Collector inform the CMHO. CMHO forms a board. They comes to the hospital. They also certify, and they take a written consent by the guardian who is in the document that, okay, you tell us to, your consent is there that we can withdraw. And this whole medical board will immediately inform the JMFC before giving shall convey the decision to the board to JMFC. CMHO will tell to the same JMFC court that our board has given the clearance. Then JMFC shall visit the patient at the earliest and after examining all aspects authorize the implementation of decision to the board. At any point of time, anyone can withdraw this, either the relative or the board or the hospital board, any point, even if the treating physician feels, no, I have an option available, at the last moment he can withdraw. So once they have conveyed to JMFC, JMFC has visited to the hospital and they will allow to execute the decision. And then, you can withdraw the ventilator. You can either or not, you will not escalate the therapy, whatever that is written in the document. So this is the whole process. Mind you, it may sound a little bit technically, well, how is it possible? But if everybody is involved, it can be done within 24 to 48 hours. It's not that tough. Now, what happens? There are certain scenarios. What happens? Suppose the medical board, either by the government or by the hospital board, feels that no, this is a point, this patient we will not allow to execute this living will. This patient may improve, or we are of the opinion that we will not allow. So what are the options available? Then the person, family members who are written in, whose name is written in the document, they can approach the High Court. So High Court then again form a board which will visit the hospital, and then they can allow or disallow. So they have the option, if we refuse but they are adamant, no, we want to withdraw, they have the option to go to the court. And again, the same process will be followed. And at any point of time, it can be withdrawn. There is no nothing special about that. Any individual may withdraw or alter the advance directive. Now there is one revocation or incapability. I am not able. Okay. The ground filling the question shall not be able to treatment. I have told you this. If the treating physician or medical board feels that while writing this advance directive, the person may not be aware of the options available. Now the options are available. We will not execute. At the time, he was not knowing that there is a sort of IBP treatment available. At the time, he was not aware of the thing that CRRT is available. At the time, he was not available that ECMO is available. He was not aware of the ECMO, what ECMO can help. So they can reject the proposal. Also, if the living will is not clear and ambiguous, you are not satisfied that what is written, it's a very vague thing, it's not very specific, you can take. When the hospital board takes a decision not to follow an advance directive, then it shall make the, okay. So it's the same thing. Anyone, if anyone is not comfortable with the advance directive, the other party can approach the High Court. That's the thing. Now what happens? Suppose a patient does not have advance directive. You have a patient, and most of the people, means 99.9% of the patients don't have advance directive. So suppose what happens, you have a patient who have not written a living will beforehand. Just it's a patient on the ventilator, on multi-organ failure or whatever you point, it's a no written, but there is no directive written by the patient himself before that. So what will happen? The only difference what will happen here, the family member will approach, means the court, Supreme Court tell that it is necessary to make it clear that there will be cases where there is no advance directive. The said class of persons cannot be alienated. We cannot exclude such patients. So what they have done this, the physician or the family member, first, there will be discussion between the family members and the treating physicians that this is the condition of this patient and we feel that there is chances of surviving are less and the efforts are futile. So they will record the minutes of that meeting in a in a document, and that document will be sent to the hospital board. Again, the hospital board will constitute a 3-member board. This 3-member board will come to the ICU. They will say, okay, yes, it's a valid point. It's a point of no return. Then they will inform their hospital administration. They will inform the collector. Collector will form a medical board by CMHO. They will come and they will they will take a consent. Again, they will inform the GFMC, and then it can be taken away. So this is the procedure. It's not easy. Same procedure. Only thing, the first, there is a advance directive is there. Second case, you have discussed and written in the document. In case there are a difference of opinion between two medical boards, your hospital board and the government board, any hospital can seek permission from the High Court. Suppose the government officials say, no, you cannot withdraw, but you people feel that we are more expertise in this and we can withdraw the support. So they refuse, so you can approach the High Court. What in case, I'm not able to see what is written here. Sir, can you read what is written in case where is the same shall be stated?
The same shall also be intimated by the magistrate of the High Court.
No. Heading, what is heading written? Because
Case there is no advance directive.
Same. The same shall be intimated by magistrate of the High Court. So same procedure will follow. So they have written very clearly, our direction with regards to advance directive are to safeguard, as mentioned here above, shall remain in force till the Parliament makes legislation on this subject. So it's very clear by the Supreme Court of India. In March 2018, they have made this document available to public. There is a 548-page document. Till a law is made in the Parliament, this is the law. Now, this was regarding today's focus is euthanasia, brainstem death, ventilator removal. I will not go into detail, but I would like to touch three aspects regarding the DNR. Do not resuscitate. Do not resuscitate is not legal in India. Even if you take the consent, it has got no legal value. And there is no term like DOR. DOR doesn't carry any legal validity. Suppose you have a patient and patient saying that I want to get discharged on request because there is a family function, there is something there. It is not. Either the patient is in a discharge position or not in a discharge position. You cannot have a patient where you can say that the patient was not comfortable, patient was not in a position to discharge, but we discharges on request. No, it's your liability. In that case, it will also only be DAMA, discharge against medical advice. As a treating physician, I want this patient, I feel that this patient should be in the hospital, but the patient doesn't want to stay, he wants to go away. So it's discharge against medical advice. DOR has got no legal value. And it's a wrong term, which is practice, which is being followed. And you need to understand the difference between LAMA and DAMA. DAMA means you have a patient and they are asking the discharge because of XYZ reason. We want to go from this hospital. That is DAMA. LAMA means you was having a patient in the ward and suddenly one morning, one evening, you find that patient has absconded. So it is left against medical advice. Patient has left. Patient has not informed you. The patient is left. So it's not, the correct term is DAMA. But if the patient doesn't inform you, leaves the hospital, nobody knows where he is gone, then LAMA term should be used. So these were the few points. So that's all for today. So I invite anybody can ask the questions.
Wonderful presentation, Ankur, at such a short time. I think it's very important in our country now where the public is becoming more aware of their rights and it is also becoming a litigious society, that we know what step and procedures we must follow. Right. So I thank you for bringing this up.
Ankur, very well executed. Last minute change and you really took over the session. Excellent brainstorming session. Very proud of you. Congratulations for this initiative.
Thank you, madam.
All of you can text your opinion and suggestions for topics or speakers, or comment on how you found the presentation useful or not.